Welcome to Pivot, the virtual event, guys. We're going to take some time to actually work with you to deliver some very, very important information with respect to how we see Wi-Fi enabling the new normal. So from a housekeeping perspective, guys, the event is an hour. Well, we'll work on delivering the actual slide content within 50 minutes, allocate 10 minutes for question and answers. We have a request. When you're submitting questions, we ask that you submit if you're submitting via the chat, you submit it to everyone rather than just the host only, because I may not be able to see all the questions coming at me while managing the event. So I have other team members that may be able to do that. So we get to answer as much as we can. The event is being recorded. If we cannot get around to answering all the questions, you will get back to you with actual answers in emails. You can have silent conversations as well to ensure that you have what you need in terms of answers. So thank you for joining, guys. Today we have with us two very important guys, and we consider them part of our team as well, our wider team, as we like to call it in Blue. We have Antonio Romero, who is the Territorial Account Manager for the Caribbean for CommScope Ruckus Networks. So Antonio's role is from a strategy and sales perspective within the region. So whenever we have to sit and determine or look at strategy with respect to our wireless portfolio and so on throughout the region that we support, Antonio is the person that we go to. From a technical perspective, we have Saul Beniquez, who is the Senior Sales Engineer for the Caribbean and Central American region for CommScope Ruckus as well. So we rely on Saul a lot to actually guide and work with our engineering team as we continue to deliver solid solutions out there. And my name, guys, is Sheldon Paul. I'm the Director for Engineering and New Business for Blue Networks Consultancy. Thank you for your time. And here we go, guys. Welcome to Pivot, the event. From an agenda perspective, so we've done the introductions, guys. We'll talk briefly about COVID-19 and what the world is now referring to as the new normal. We'll go into actually demonstrating using different scenarios how we've seen, not just us, but how the world has seen Wi-Fi enabling a lot of the efforts to save lives and the new normal moving forward. We'll then dive into how we think we can help as an organization and with the help of CommScope, and we'll take some time to go into question and answers. So COVID-19, guys, just briefly, and then I'll hand it over to Antonio. COVID-19, for us as a country, Trinidad and Tobago, we've seen a lot of what the world has shown us with respect to the devastation and so on. As a country, I think we're lucky in terms of where we are with respect to handling the actual outbreak. But I want us to agree that this is, at least in my view, the most significant change that we've seen. We've seen over our time within technology, we've actually adapted to technologies going and coming. When certain technologies have actually evolved, we move towards next technology, etc. So we continue to evolve as a people, but a lot of the technology we've adapted to over the last few months, we can argue may have been forced within the context of saving lives, helping people get over the virus, and supporting the efforts of the relevant countries that we live in to actually help in this pandemic. And we want to talk about that, guys. So COVID-19 for us, we've seen as a huge transition or adaptation to technology, and we want to talk about that within the time frame that we have today. So I'll pass it over to Antonio because we see that we have our own perspective and we wanted to work with a company like CommScope Ruckus to bring that global perspective because these guys have a lot of experience, not just in our region, but the wider community. So Antonio, let me hand it over to you.
Thanks, Sheldon. So as Sheldon mentioned, well, first of all, good afternoon, right? Antonio again, nice meeting you virtually. And I hope we can enjoy, the next 50 or so minutes together, just having a conversation and trying to figure this out together, right? But before we go deeper into our discussion on this afternoon, I wanted to take a few seconds on this, right? Our sympathies and prayers for for all the people that were adversely affected by the coronavirus, one way or another. Remembering all the fallen ones over this pandemic and wishing all of you and your loved ones to be safe going forward. So I think this is, as you can only imagine, this is a situation that affects everybody globally, right? And we want to recognize that we sympathize with this, situation that we have, and then we are here together to help in any way you can. I think this is the time where we can demonstrate that we are stronger together as a society and we can help each others out. So going a little bit into more into details of the topic of today. Oh yeah, sorry about that. So I gotta tell you. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the last 3 months, right? There has been definitely some challenging. Talking about going back a little, a couple of months ago, between February and March, we collectively went into a fear phase, right? Nobody knew what was this coronavirus, this COVID-19, and the virus was spreading from country to another country, and we were all watching the news. Government didn't know what to do. We were not expecting this, and unfortunately many patients went into hospitals and quarantine, and not all of them survived, right? So that was like step or phase one, let's say, extreme fear. Then the second phase came in, and I will say we'll say it is between March and April, right? So society, business, and government throughout the world came together to slow down the economy activity, advise people to be safe and care for the loved one. That was the main priority. And also some countries ask their citizens to stay at home, always stay home. You see it everywhere, hashtag stay at home. This is the way to prevent that the virus, spread. So in additional to that, a few governments adopt new social protocols, and I would say most of them social distance. As you are already aware, 10 feet distance between one person and another one. If you try to not go out by any means, but if you need to go out, take some prescription, right? And then we start May about a week ago, and I think you might agree with me saying that we have been seeing some improvement, you might say. We're now focused on re-emergence into this new normal and mitigating the virus 24/7 while we go back to productivity. So I think that's the main focus on May, right? Moving forward, we are adapting to this new reality, what we're calling in this webinar, new normal, and try to still mitigating the virus 24/7, but try to compromise with productivity. Thank you, Saul. So bottom line is COVID-19 slowed us down, but did not shut us down 100%. So that's good news. Again, new social protocols are still needed. However, we are now seeing a massive shift into a remote access for work and education. More likely, the majority of the ones that are here together right now, they have a wife or husband working next to them, or maybe they have a kid that is actually taking a class right now in the next room. So this is the new reality. The home is at the center of this trend. So now more than ever, Wi-Fi connectivity of the home becomes a precious resources and a very relevant one. So now what it means to work connected from home. So we service clients remotely, as we have been doing. We provide training and technical assistance to end users, as we are doing it today. Not so much in a technical way. This is more what we like to see as a conversational webinar, where we all put some of our thoughts together and just have a conversation. But in general, we are providing trainings and technical assistance to end users. And when it comes to education, we have teachers delivering lessons from their home office. We also have students that are also engaged from home, taking classes, delivering reports. They have deadlines that they have to be met. So again, going back to productivity. So this is expected to remain until at least summer. And I will think personally that it's going to be beyond that. Some of my, I have two sisters, both of them have kids. One of them live in Spain. The other one live here in Florida. We are located in Florida. And both of them already told me that none of their kids are going to go to school the next semester. They're going to take it from home as well. So this is a situation that regardless we moving forward, it's going to stay for a little longer than what we want, or at least the reality that we have today, right? Next.
Quick comment before we go to the next slide. I wonder if Sheldon can color a little bit that situation with a local point of view? Because you mentioned Florida, Spain, generally in the US, what you said is just completely correct. What is the situation in your islands, in Trinidad and Tobago specifically?
All right, thanks, Saul. Similar to what we're seeing in the wider world, with respect to us as a country now starting to open up and transition back into the new normal, I would say that's what we're seeing now. Our country has still not opened its borders. We're still on lockdown, but our version of lockdown is not state of emergency or anything like that. So I have been seeing, I know we have been seeing the drastic shift, the work from home, the delivering training and so on, businesses fighting to actually continue to deliver services and so on remotely. And we are now starting to see some sense of going back to normal in Trinidad
Okay.
right now. It's not open fully yet, but we are seeing the improvements as the government actually tries to work and manage these things. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So let's move to the next slide, right?
Yeah. Before we continue, I think we need to mute. Oh, you already did?
Yeah, I already did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually new reality, right?
Yep.
And it's not anybody's fault, right? We have kids. I don't have kids yet, but this is the reality that we're talking about.
Yes. Correct.
And we've been getting to know families, co-workers, throughout all these webinars that we're doing. And it's actually, I found it really interesting because you get to see a person interacting in their family. And somehow, I know some of the people like me, like Saul, we has been working from home for the past 2 3 years. So we are, let's say we have a different accommodation in terms of our office. We're used to work like that. We were asked to be, have an office and make sure you have a work environment per se. But not a lot of people are doing like that. Many of our coworkers within CommScope, sometimes we're in internal term webinars, and you see that there are on their kids' rooms, and you see the background, a lot of animals on the wall and all that, and it's just a reality. It's just the way it is right now, right?
Yep.
So continue to the next slide. Wi-Fi is enabling the new normal, right? I want to share some of the some studies, the pre-COVID, right? Pre-COVID-19. This is studies from January 2020 and before that. So remote work. Oh, sorry. Okay. So remote work has been enabling the work, as we've been talking already. Workers on one side, e-learnings on the other, students and workers, right? So I want to share some statistics taken from different studies before COVID-19. In the US, studies show that 7 million people are remote workers already, part-time or full-time, which represent approximately a 3.4% of the US population. So we have 330, 340 million people in the US. 3.4% of those already were working remote. Now, 43% of the US employees work remotely with some frequency. That means that they're not naturally remote workers, but they do it with some frequency. For example, me personally, on my previous job, I used to work 1 day a week from my house. That's it. I was not a remote position, but I was able to do it every once in a while, every other week, one time a week. And I'm part of that 43% at that point, right? But so I want to mention something else, because you see 43% and you think, you see 7 million people and you think, well, that's not too much. But you got to think about 340 million people, not all of them are working. Some of them are students, some of them are little kids, some of them are older. So you have to take only the percentage that actually work in the US. And then on top of that, not every single profession can be done by remote work. Like if you are in a healthcare and you are a nurse, you have to be at the clinic. You cannot be at your home. So another study that I'm not showing here says that about 65% of the US employees can actually be eligible to work remotely. So out of those 65%, 43% are already working for some frequency, at least some of the time. This is according to a Gallup more recent State of American Workplace. So it can be said that in North America, this has been a trending over the last 5 years, a 44% growth over that period. And I didn't have it here, but over the last 10 years, a 96% increase, and over the last 15 years, 180% increase on remote work, difference between 15 years ago and today. So definitely we have seen some increase in people working from home even before COVID-19, right?
Okay.
And it's worth to mention too, Antonio and Sheldon, that when we see this type of studies reflected on the North America region,
Yeah.
when you think about Asia, when you think about Latin America, you think about Europe. Maybe Europe and the U.S. tend to be hand by hand, but Asia, Latin America tends to be more like a follower market, where maybe
Correct.
this same trend is going to manifest maybe 2 or 3 years later. So maybe
Correct.
U.S. is not year number 5, and who's to say maybe in the Caribbean we're year number 1, or maybe year number 2, depending on the country.
Correct.
True. Do you want to make any comment, Sheldon?
Yeah. No. Just to,
Doors?
just to say that with respect to work from home in Trinidad, we are definitely seeing an increase because you have many organizations, and I do not want to use the word old fashioned, but you have many organizations that still operate in the traditional sense where productivity is associated with visually seeing that person and that person being physically in place. I think some of those organizations may have been hit with the situation where they had to adapt. So, coming out of COVID-19 and the pandemic, I expect some change. But in terms of whether or not we had a huge population with respect to working from home and so on, I think we had a significant amount, but I still think there's a lot to be desired with respect to the ability and not just the ability to work from home, but there's a lot to be desired with respect to organizations gravitating to that to make it more widespread.
Or more about feeling ready to do that shift.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
we are
I
223
understand what you're saying.
guys. Okay, go ahead.
So, thank you. So this is another slide that I want to show more studies, right? But this is more towards post COVID-19. So majority of the citizen today is now shelter, right? Like we all are today. Workplace and schools are closed. Government offices are reduced to very essential activities and no massive gatherings, right? At least in the US, the proposition is no more than 10 people at the same time in the same room. I think it's in general, it's more or less the same advice the government are giving to people. However, as mentioned before, businesses are not shut down 100%. As remote connected work has accelerated by force of the situation, right? So Gartner made a study, as you can see in the slide, and they asked to a few CFO through, in the United States, and 74% of these CFO says that at least 5% of their workforce will be shifting to permanent remote position. And then on the same amount of CFO, they also ask how many you think is going to be, a higher percentage, and close to 25% of those says that they plan to grow up to 20% of the workforce to work remotely. So it's a new normal, right? One thing that I want to mention that I yesterday I was talking to Saul, some talking about this presentation, and one thing that caught my eye, because I start Googling a lot about information on working remotely, and I was mentioning Saul that it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Many of the new workers that are coming, mostly millennium, for example, they are asking for better, I'm not going to say conditions, but most of them, they prefer to make less money, you might say, less salary, but with better condition. Working from home is a good condition. And if you keep on looking for more studies, they will show you that when you have a company that has employees working from home, they can be more productive. So this is shown, and not only that, but they can also save, an example, in the US, you can also save money on gas. I'm sure the same happened in Trinidad. You can always, save sometimes in traffic because traffic is everywhere. So
Oh yeah.
there's a lot of things that you have to take in consideration. And for companies, they should be looking at least to start trying working from home. And the reason is if you want to keep your talent, these are some of the things that you have to keep on doing in order to retain those talents. And then this is just showing that the same trends is happening not only for workers but also for students from home. It's basically now a norm. Now let's talk about a little bit about this is a website. I will share, well, most likely Saul will share the presentation with children. But
Yes.
if you see below, there is a link. If you go to that link, it will tell you, a quick snapshot of ISP speeds in Trinidad and Tobago. These are from different ISP, and just to give you an idea of some of the speed that you have in different cities throughout Trinidad. Next. Regardless of you being connected to your ISP via DOCSIS or DSL or FTTH, we are all relying on the ISP, right? So what that means? The ISP come to our outside of the house and wire our house or our community to their infrastructure, right? Just like it's showing in the picture. Little technician, he goes and he wire the house to their infrastructure. But then also the ISP next. You can click a few next on because I'm not gonna be able to do it. Yeah. But then also the ISP comes into our house and more likely they will install a residential Wi-Fi device, like the one that you're seeing in the screen, right? Where do they install it? Usually where it's more convenient to them, right? Sometimes you have a good technician that is on a good move and he will go and you say, well, can you install it here? And he will run a cable for you. But in general speaking, they will install it the easiest way. And that's not necessarily the best position to be this Wi-Fi router, residential Wi-Fi device, right? So now I ask, was that device ever thought as an enabler for concurrent work and education on 24/7 basis? Remember, when these ISP come to your house and install those residential Wi-Fi router, they're not thinking in today's position. They were thinking in yesterday, right? Most of the time, people were working or studying at their university or school, and nobody was at home. So the real need of that residential Wi-Fi router was just to check on emails when you go back from your work or maybe watch a movie at night, but it wasn't the same need that you have today. Anybody? Oh, I heard something. Okay, so next.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, so the home beat at the center, I can safely say that we can actually rely on the ISP. I don't think the ISP has an issue or we have a problem with the ISP. However, I believe we need to rethink of the Wi-Fi for that home. Rather than having a Wi-Fi, a domestic Wi-Fi or a Wi-Fi for home use, you have to ensure that the Wi-Fi device can enable for concurrent work and education. Provide a capacity, provide capacity, speeds, and some of those home Wi-Fi devices, they're not meant to be running 24/7 because they're not going to last longer than a couple of years. You need an enterprise solution. Remember, now you guys are working from home. I need to have a reliable connection to be able to connect with my peers and to have webinars and to learn more. And the same with the kids, right? I was telling a coworker the other day, if your kid is learning and the internet got slow because there's many people in your house connected, he's not gonna be learning. At that point, he's gonna be out of the group. And then when he come back, they're gonna be way ahead of the subject and he's going to be having trouble to catch up. So this is affecting everybody. I even think that perhaps a managed enterprise solution can be also an option for the residents. So with this, I conclude my side of the presentation and I pass it through Saul.
Excellent, Antonio. Thank you very much. I'm going to basically take it exactly where you left it. I'm going to talk a little bit more in details about some of the scenarios that you can encounter. And on purpose, when we were drafting the presentation and putting together the content, we wanted to show an empty classroom. And on top of that, what is the new normal? The new normal for the empty classroom is it's actually virtual classroom. So there's challenges associated with the scenario, right? You have at home, we have home grade connectivity being set up by the ISP. Like Antonio mentioned, nobody in the past was thinking that this was going to be a lifesaver from a work perspective or from an education perspective, sustaining not only mom and dad working from home, but also the kids going to their school, or the more senior kids that are high school or university students having to continue education at that level, depending on the home Wi-Fi, right? So a lot of the challenges are around the capacity, the bandwidth, having to share that same resource that was not never ever thought of a high capacity piece of equipment in that environment. And now you have to think about the use cases too, because primary education for kids is more about the student, the parent, and the teacher having contact and collaborating. And when it comes to high school, university students, you have a different scenario there. You have more autonomous students using virtual resources, using even online examination. They rely less on the professor, and they rely much, much more on the technology. So the use cases are clearly different. So the way forward for this type of situation that deals with education is going to be enterprise grade network that can be brought to the home, basically. Uh, these devices can be controlled from a policy perspective, restrictions perspective. You can have ways of blocking certain contents, let's say for kids, or avoiding them being on social networks during class time. This is the type of controls that you cannot really implement on a residential piece of equipment. So virtually managed cloud subscription to Wi-Fi, it's one of the ways to go going forward. I remember, Sheldon, that we had a slide on the enterprise. I think we missed it. Maybe in this deck, I failed to put that in there. But anyway, the next one that I can talk about, and this is by virtue of personal experience. Let me give you a little bit of a background story here very quickly. In March, Antonio and I participated on an event in Colombia, and this is before the countries were closing borders, before we were even aware of the pandemic going on, right? We heard some things going on in China, but we didn't relate to it as if it was so close to us. We were traveling, going to different events. We went to Colombia early in March, and when we came back, we got a little bit of news regarding the places we were in Colombia of the potential exposure to the coronavirus. So for me personally, that forces me to seek a way of going into a facility where I can be tested, and I did. I found myself, rather than going into a traditional hospital, they sent me to a location outside of the hospital where they had this type of military hospital tents set up. And as a matter of fact, one was set up in such a way that for me to get to talk to the professionals, the caregivers, the first responders, I had to drive my car inside the tent and talk to 3 different stations until I got to the last one where I was actually tested. So the reason I bring that story up is because when I was looking at that place, I realized that the hospital was expanding their installations, expanding their locations outside of the scope of the main building. And for that to happen, that relies a lot on being able to have the proper connectivity. And when you think about connectivity in this scenario, we're not only talking about just Wi-Fi, but it's Wi-Fi with the right grade of security, with the right grade of integration when it comes to delivering content from the main location where you're actually taking the patient's information into the hospital's database, and even one step further, delivering that type of information regarding how many patients have been tested or what have been the results to even government institutions that are tracking it from a government health organizations such as the CDC in the United States. So the challenges that you see here is connectivity. These places need to be connected either through copper wire or fiber or even wireless point to point. But ideally, in the location where the caregivers and nurses and practitioners are going to be working with the patients, they have to have very reliable wireless connectivity for the equipment to work to be able to take all the patient's information and send that to the database. But the way forward for a situation like this one is provide enterprise grade network into these facilities. Virtually managed Wi-Fi, it's one way of going, right? You can have a provider, in this case, this was in the US, but if this were to happen in your territory, you can have a provider, or maybe Blue has a way of hosting via one of our wireless LAN controller platforms, hosting the APs remotely and do the managed services for the Wi-Fi. The whole idea here is to leverage the Wi-Fi access point that can deliver this kind of services with the security that is required, not only by the hospital, but also by the government, and being able to deliver API integration or traffic integration to databases. So this is not a PowerPoint use case. I went through this in my own personal life. Have you seen anything like this from other countries, maybe in the news? Sheldon?
Not so far though. In our country, what we've done, we've set up actually parallel healthcare systems. So
Yeah.
how we treated with COVID-19, these patients were actually held elsewhere, not within the actual public health system that the rest of people who required assistance were warded out,
Yeah.
but they were done separately. So
That protects hospitals and
yes,
patients.
yes.
Yes.
I personally would not have not seen this, but I can see the application though, because even all the requirements in terms of security and privacy using HIPAA and a lot of those other standards, it's very critical to have those things satisfied. And it's not just about connectivity, but it's secure connectivity. So I would
Yeah.
also wanted to point here that the slide that we missed concerning the enterprise, it
Yeah.
spoke in a similar respect what we looked at with respect to the schools. The offices now are empty. So you, again, similar to the schools and the
Yeah.
classrooms, you have a shift from the physical office to the confines of your physical personal space, which are your homes. And
Yeah.
along with those challenges, what we're seeing moving forward in terms of the technology being used, managed Wi-Fi is not just being used as it was traditionally, which is to reduce operational expenses, et cetera, but it's also being used to extend a similar experience. For instance, some of the customers so a lot of organizations have security concerns. They have concerns with shifting the user experience.
Yes.
My user base right now is accustomed to logging on to this SSID,
Yes.
authenticating using this method. So when I put them in their house, there's a shift, and sometimes that shift doesn't breed productivity. So you find that with the managed Wi-Fi platforms, you can
Yeah.
extend the same SSID, the same authentication method, and by extension, the same secure experience to that
That is
client.
correct.
So you're
Yes.
actually not just providing connectivity, but you're providing an actual extension of the office to your home. And this is a huge shift, guys. This wasn't the approach to manage Wi-Fi before. The
Yeah.
focus to manage Wi-Fi before was primarily on let me just extend Wi-Fi. But now you're extending the physical office with all the security protocols and other things that are concerns. So that was
Yes.
the slide we missed, but I just thought it was a point that we needed to ensure that the people on the call got.
No,
So
no problem. And you touch all the right points. The one thing I want to add for the benefit of the audience is in the Ruckus technology, when it comes to wireless LAN controllers, we always have in the enterprise a tunnel that we connect from the wireless LAN controller to the AP, and we use that to administer that resource. In other words, we might reconfigure the AP, we might send new software versions or configurations and IT policies. Basically, what you are saying on your comment that was very accurate is that if we do that extended to the home, that same tunnel that we had at the office can be structured and implemented to that Wi-Fi piece of equipment at home. And when we're provisioning that AP and providing configuration and software version, we're treating it exactly the same way as we treat the AP inside of the office, and it becomes an extension of the office. Excellent, thank you. So this case about the hospital, I want to touch very quickly on this one again, because I want to really illustrate the point about how critical is the communication systems for this one to work. So first of all, you have patients that are already using telemedicine applications from their tablet or from their mobile device. This lady here has a concern about her kid, and she's touching him on the forefront, trying to gauge if he has a fever, and this is going to touch the app on the tablet, and it's going to create an interaction with the hospital, basically creating a record and asking for an appointment. If she's lucky, she gets an appointment for the same day or maybe the same morning. And what happened next is this patient, because it's suspected to be a COVID-19 symptoms type of patient, they're going to be sent to a lab, maybe a lab just as the one I'm illustrating on the slide. And they're going to take a sample and they're going to send that sample to a actual test lab that's going to actually do the DNA and molecular type testing that they do to determine if that patient was test positive or negative. The whole point here is that database from the hospital receives patient information, lab order tracking information, and test results. And that same information is also shared in many respects with the government. So when I was talking about privacy and encryption, is because we need to protect the patient, but also we need to make sure that we can integrate into the databases that rely on these events. And not only that, once we took care of the compliance part that the database are taking care of, then it comes the practitioner, right? It could be a doctor or a nurse practitioner or epidemiologist that want to talk to that patient and give that patient further instructions. That could be you're isolated for the next 14 days on your room, or you have to go to the hospital because your life is in danger. And then this is the kind of interaction that when you really think about it, the connectivity with the Wi-Fi is at the center of everything. If you really think about it, we have at the home, the guy is remaining in quarantine, that kid that we were just discussing, and he's going to be monitored both by the practitioners and also by his family. So that person isolated in the room is going to have very minimal interaction with the family, maybe just to be fed during the days and administer some medicine. But for the most part, it's going to be left by himself. So having Wi-Fi at the home that works, it's a big deal for somebody who's in quarantine. Let me tell you that. The other thing is he's going to interact and communicate with the practitioner over the tablet, right? So every couple of days or every couple of 4 hours or whatever, there's going to be some level of interaction where the practitioner might want to communicate back with that patient just to keep it monitored. So communication on the home, big deal when it comes to telemedicine, especially in the pandemic era. But when you look at it from a hospital's perspective, you need to have the robust wireless access in the hospital and integration to the database. As I said before, the data encryption is pretty important. The fact that you can extend SSIDs into the outpatient facility, specifically for guests or patients, at the same time that you have SSIDs that are specifically for transferring patients' information. That's one way of managing it, or maybe using the tunnels that we can support from our wireless LAN platforms. Certainly, this is basically a healthcare use case that could be with us for some time until this pandemic goes away. And I think the healthcare industry was not fully ready for this, and they're learning something from it. So this is the perspective that I can bring you from my own experience here in Florida. Not to say that this is going to be replicated, it's going to happen exactly the same way in Trinidad, but keep it in mind because your healthcare providers in Trinidad might have maybe not the same exact use case or scenario, but they might have something similar in mind. The whole point here is the Wi-Fi network. It's enabling first responders. Number one, telehealth is becoming a thing. It's becoming a trend for treatment remotely for patients, so you can control contagion. And also, not only from a perspective of the home, but also from a perspective of the healthcare facilities. So going away from healthcare and talking a little bit more about the industry, and let's figure out something here that when we talk industry, think about it more from a perspective of utility companies, about oil and gas companies, the people who actually carry your gasoline to the gas station on the trucks, right? These are the companies who keep the lights on. These are the companies that are, I don't want to say they're first responders because we're not talking in terms of the pandemic, but they keep the country running. So despite all the shelter at home and don't open your businesses and close down that we have seen in several countries, a company who is producing energy cannot close down. So they need to have employees not only tending the machinery and tending the processes, but making sure that they have enough people to react to any circumstances. These are more traditional employees where they have a PC at the office. They probably don't have a laptop at home because they do 50% office work and maybe 50% in the field. They have to go to places where they have, let's say, oil and gas pipelines, or they have tanks, diesel tanks that they monitor for the generators and stuff like that. So they're critical workers. They spend quite some time monitoring these outdoor facilities. How do accommodate for them now that we have this situation? So what I see going forward, and then this is something that it's more like a scenario that I see playing out, is companies shifting their focus to provide more mobile computing devices to these employees that traditionally work at an office at a PC that is at the desk. Uh, they need to think about in terms of enterprise grade network for the home as well. The same thing we've been seeing for enterprise as a whole, or for healthcare and education. Same thing we can say for this type of employees. What I see more into specifics to this segment of the industry is virtually managed service enterprise Wi-Fi for the home workers is one piece of the equation. But if that worker can have that and as well have any way of having IoT solutions in their installations. For example, if this person is a technician that visits a diesel tank 4 times a week, most likely he's exposing himself to the pandemic if he have to go every 2 days to the tank, if he's interacting with other people. If we could have IoT sensors in that tank and maybe limit his visits for once a week, that's a way of containing the spread of the pandemic in the country. So many of these installations on the virtual managed enterprise wireless LAN Wi-Fi will be ideal if we can also deploy a Wi-Fi access point that can accommodate IoT sensors by means of adopting IoT technology. And we have solutions like that we can talk about for this type of scenario. Solutions in which, for example, technologies such as Wi-Fi and Zigbee coexist. You have the employee connecting his mobile device through Wi-Fi, but maybe when he wants to read a sensor, the data gets to the cloud through a Zigbee communication to the access point. So we can have access points on the industrial facilities the same way we have access points in the employee's house. And in that regard, this particular scenario for this employee is relying on 2 different locations where we can put our technology to work.
And
At the remote facility and also at home. Yeah.
and Saul, many people on the call, I mean, for those of you guys who understand Zigbee and so on, a lot of you may have been exposed to Zigbee more or less in the automation space, home automation and so on.
Yeah.
Zigbee is also used, widely for monitoring, access, control devices, sensors, and so on. So it's also used in the industrial, oil and gas type industry to monitor sensors and so on remotely. So it's not just an automation protocol, it's actually a protocol for shortwave transmissions. And it was developed specifically to facilitate connectivity of devices that did not traditionally require connectivity, like door locks, sensors, pressure sensors, gas tank sensors, these things that are not traditional Wi-Fi devices. So Zigbee is actually designed to provide connectivity to those things. And we see this increasing a lot in the oil and gas and industrial sector, primarily because these guys need to continue to keep the lights on and still stay safe.
Yeah. Imagine you can have an outdoor access point at the substation, right? Or wherever you have your generation tanks that feed the generators. And you have a Wi-Fi access point that is outdoor, and you can retrofit that Wi-Fi access point with an IoT radio that encapsulates the information from the sensors and can send it back to the controller, the IoT controller in this case. And in that way, if you're sitting at home and you're that technician that has to be out there every 2 days, you can now say, because of COVID, I'm going to monitor that tank once a week because the Wi-Fi that is out there is allowing me to collect the Zigbee information. And we at Ruckus have solutions that do this. It's something that we are promoting in the market for this particular type of segment, where you have industrial applications converging with the Wi-Fi solutions. Yes. So to try to bring the topic to more like a summary, what are those impacts now at home? Now that we understand that the Wi-Fi, the residential router, it's becoming much relevant resource, and we have much more people at home relying on it for different reasons. We can have work, education, and even the normal usages that we had before. those impacts, right? So the new normal, if you analyze this from a prior versus now, you know that before when you obtained the service from the ISP and the ISP came to your home and wired your home with the residential router, you were using that for evening and weekend usages, and outages were inconvenient, but if it were out for 2 hours, it will come back. It was not a big deal. You can always revert back to do social networking from your 3G, 4G connectivity on your mobile. So you did social networking, media streaming, video chats with your family and friends. For the kids, mostly about online gaming and chatting with your buddies. But a lot of browsing and shopping goes on the regular Wi-Fi at home. Like in my case, I buy stuff from Amazon and I'm always browsing on the Wi-Fi. Or home security IoT domotic type applications, right? You want to control the door or have a little camera somewhere where you can, when the kids are coming from school, you can monitor the kids from work and make sure that they got home safe. This is the kind of applications that Wi-Fi was used to in the normal prior to COVID-19 world. Now, today we have all of those that we mentioned at the left of the screen, plus more. We have heavy work weekday usage now because now mom and dad's working from home. My brother, who is in first year college, is now doing all his tests at home. I have to do homework and talk to the teacher from home if I'm a kid, right? So we have all those things. The tolerance to outages is gone to zero. Now we need to rely on that resource, and we cannot tolerate any faults. It has to be there 7/24, 365. Now we have telehealth too, because of the pandemic, you're not very keen on going to a doctor's office and expose yourself to other people who are sick. So you want to talk to your doctor over a screen. It could be a mobile device or a tablet computer screen. So telehealth is going to become another trend, and the doctors better be ready in their offices too to provide these services, because a lot of people are going to be refraining themselves to going physically face to face with the doctor in the office. As we are now that we're doing this session, this chat, this pivot, we're using video conferencing resources. We're using right now WebEx, and there's a lot of Zoom, WebEx, Teams, BlueJeans, Google Meet, you name it, going on across the globe. Everybody is doing meetings with 20, 30, 40. We've done webinars with some of our distributors with 400 people on the call. So it's becoming very, very dense in terms of telecommunications and collaboration type of communications through the Wi-Fi of the homes. And distance learning, like we said, not only the kids, but in our case, for example, we train our partners. We Ruckus are having training sessions with partners all the time using this type of teleconferencing for the purposes of learning at the distance. And all of this is generating a lot of voice over Wi-Fi traffic. Even phone calls are going to voice over Wi-Fi much more now than before. So imagine your Wi-Fi router from the ISP company having to handle all this stuff. 7/24, 365, would it be able to sustain it? That's the big question. So the question that we ask, and this is a collective question between Blue Networks and Ruckus as a collective, how can we help? We know that there's a new normal. We talked about it already. There's a dramatic shift in usage patterns and network demand, increased concurrent users on one end. The real-time voice and video traffic is a reality. The number of devices that can connect to a particular router at a given time, let's face it, the residential Wi-Fi router is not designed for up and beyond maybe 12, 15 concurrent sessions. When number 13 or 14 wants to join, somebody else has to drop out. If it's low activity on my mobile device, guess what happens? The Wi-Fi is going to drop my session. So that's what happens. You see a lot of degradation in terms of performance when it comes to volume of users as you grow the users and less bandwidth is available, or there's no longer any sessions. Maybe the CPU computing power of this residential router, it's not high enough to sustain a lot of concurrent sessions for a lot of users. And that's where we come in with a managed enterprise solution, one that can offer all the controls and security and policy provisioning that we have at the enterprise, but also can provide capacity and adaptive antennas that can adjust to the circumstances in the home. That's what we think we can collectively as Blue and Ruckus talk about for establishing a way of getting that into the home and enabling the home to have more bandwidth capacity, quality of service, which becomes very relevant when we talk about services that don't tolerate latency, such as Wi-Fi calling, or when we're in a webinar, we want to make sure that they see video and audio synchronized at the same time without any latency. So that's basically what we talk about in this particular slide. We want to put the contrast between the difference between the residential and the enterprise grade. Do you have any comment or question you want to add here?
I can bring it up in the Q&A section. Some people have started to send in questions because they're actually into the Q&A. So I can use that time to actually give my points on that shift, which is very important actually.
So just to quickly round it up, basically the challenges Blue and CommScope Ruckus networks are ready. We sorry about the phone. Let me try to drop that off. That's the challenges of working from home. We have solutions that can enable the remote worker, right? Enterprise grade, high capacity, security, transfer all that experience that we have from the office to the environment of the home for that enterprise worker, but also be sensitive that we have to also accommodate the needs of education, the kids, the teenagers that are in the high school and university levels, make sure that that resource is for them as well. And the workers that are on the industrial side of things or healthcare, they have some particular needs. Maybe allow the growth of the network, the managed network, into further services that make their working remotely much more productive. And IoT could be one of them. Telemetry for patients could be one of them as well on the healthcare side. The whole point here is that we, as Ruckus and Blue Networks, I think we have the knowledge, the solutions, the know-how to be able to, come up with some solutions that can solve the customer's problems.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, most definitely.
Yep. So we want you to love your Wi-Fi, but we also advise you vigorously you avoid these situations. So there you go. So with that, we can go directly. You can join the jokes a little bit later when they sent you the copy of the presentation, but we can go directly to the Q&A.
All right. Thank you, guys. I have some questions here, and the guys out there that may have questions, you can unmute your mic and we can try to take them. But let me get the ones that are in chat first. We are 2:59, so in allocating the 10 minutes for questions, we'll actually be 5 minutes over. So I have a question from Claudia White. I am one of those that became self-employed since last year and has been working from home. My son works, but is now home as he is not an essential worker. I would have antivirus software on my machine. Is that inadequate? I need to change to a commercial type router. Although once my son is back out to work, I am sure it will fall back to normal performance. Before COVID-19, I was working without issues. What is the average price? Okay, so Claudia, you're asking average price. Price depends on what you want to accomplish. Let me acknowledge the question by saying what you are experiencing is very real. We have had situations where we've worked with some customers to address those exact concerns within the home. And let me also add that to help one lucky person on this event, we are actually going to give away one of those devices to help with that same situation that you are experiencing at home, Claudia. You may be that lucky person. Let's see. We want to give the person that is most interactive. But to answer your question, Claudia, from an antivirus perspective, antivirus would not speak to the actual Wi-Fi device that you use for connectivity. Antivirus can speak to a series of things. If you're connecting to the enterprise, antivirus could be something that the enterprise extends to you. If you're connecting on a personal device, antivirus could be something you have on your personal device. What I want you to take away from that answer is that security is the concern. Security could be addressed by a number of platforms. The Wi-Fi platform can address security in terms of secure connectivity. Antivirus addresses security in terms of monitoring what you do on your machine. But they are separate things.
Yeah.
In terms of the performance degradation that you're seeing, that I'm almost certain it's primarily because of the device that is being used is not designed to deliver the capacity that you are requesting from it. And that's the challenge we see a lot in the residents. And we can definitely take this up with you and recommend the most appropriate device for you to address those concerns because they can get very annoying. All right. Saul, you want to add anything there?
Just a very quick comment. Depending on how long ago she had the contract with the ISP and they came to the home to wire the home and provide her with a piece of equipment that provides a Wi-Fi access to the house. If that happened 5 years ago, chances are that that Wi-Fi piece of equipment is antiquated in terms of technology. Maybe it's already time to look into upgrading the piece of equipment. If it happened like a year ago, then you have to still check with ISP what technology was implemented, because in Wi-Fi you have the 802.11n, which is pretty old, 11AC, which is almost current, and now we have most recent protocols and Wi-Fi 11ax that for the most part is not widely adopted yet in the market, but it will come within a year. So
Okay. I have this question. Let me put this to you, Saul. I have Leslie. Hi, Leslie. Leslie is asking, what is the minimum standard for the enterprise level router? I know why I put that to you as opposed to me answering it. What is the minimum standard?
Can you repeat the question? What's the minimum
What
standard
is the
for
minimum
enterprise?
standard for enterprise level router? And in this case, a lot of people use the term router very loosely. In this case, let's look at this as a Wi-Fi device. What's the minimum standard for enterprise level Wi-Fi device?
Okay, minimum standard is in the current market, the way the market stands today, at least you have to have WPA2 encryption. You have to have a way of having a secure SSID where you log into your Wi-Fi, right? In many cases, if you're running Wi-Fi in your home, depending who your ISP is and what brand of router you get, you may have WPA2. If you have WPA1, you're in trouble because that was hacked like maybe 8 years ago. So that's not good. WPA2 is good for encryption on the SSID connectivity. Nowadays, our company, Ruckus CommScope, is pushing everything that we release to the market right now with WPA3, which is the next standard. So from an enterprise perspective, there's other ways of authenticating users as well. One thing is the encryption of the connectivity, and the other thing is how you authenticate the user. And normally, the enterprise clients use a form of a server who authenticates those users. It could be a Radius server, it could be an Active Directory type server. In some very corner case occasions, you might get away with authenticating users using, let's say, LinkedIn credentials, but that's more on the hotel hospitality.
Yeah, and guest type access.
Right, that's not for enterprise high-grade security.
To add to that, Leslie, we've seen in a lot of our deployments, besides the using minimum requirements like WPA2 and so on, now upcoming WPA3, we've seen minimum requirements like, as Saul mentioned, combining those protocols with additional authentication methods, for example, LDAP or Active Directory. And I know I may be confusing you, but we can always have a separate call to clear up anything that I throw at you that you may not understand. So in an enterprise, it's not just about the protocol that you use to encrypt end-to-end communication, which in this case could be WPA2, but it's also combined with how do you ensure that your user authenticates against an enterprise level or enterprise grade set of user IDs and credentials or database. And
that is correct.
These protocols are combined with company stipulated authentication methods like Active Directory. Some use 8211 X, which is radius. So it gets more and more complicated based on the organization that you're in. But to answer your question, the access points need to support at a minimum the WPA2, a minimum ability to integrate into third-party authentication platforms like Active Directory and so on. So we can always, there's a lot more that you can find out, and I'm happy to take that call with you and answer all your questions.
But I think it's also good to mention, because the way I interpret it is, part of security, but then another compare that you can do against home devices. If you go to Amazon, for example, and you buy a device, more likely that device is going to be able to serve 15, 20 concurrent sessions, while the minimum that we offer is 100 sessions. So that doesn't mean that you're going to use all of them. And remember, every session, every client is one session. So you don't want to have your your home device that it can only support 15, 20 sessions up to the maximum. Because again, it's not going to last more than a couple of years. So that's another difference that you can see when you compare enterprise versus a home device.
Correct.
The reliability of the equipment. Yeah.
And Antonio, to add to your point, remember when we call figures, as soon as you drop authentication on top of that access point, those figures drop in half. So you may buy an access point off of Amazon that tells you, I can support 20 users. But as soon as you want to do encryption, that 20 drops to 5, 10.
Yeah.
So more overhead. Yeah, we just have to be mindful, guys, that the shift that we're seeing out in the environment now, we have to face facts that what we are asking of those traditional devices in our homes, they just may not be able to deliver. At some point, I think we need to see that. I have a question from St. Lucia, guys. Hi, St. Lucia. Can Ruckus send me information on their solutions so I can assess them in relation to my ICT clients in St. Lucia and regionally? So Gideon, most definitely. We actually have some clients in St. Lucia as well. So I have taken a note of that, and I have your email info, so I'll reach out to you very soon, if not after this call, just to see if we can set up a meeting to talk further about how you can engage people in St. Lucia. I also have a question, guys. Now we have this device to give away, and we need to give away this device in a few minutes. And I'm seeing the questions flowing in now as soon as I said we're going to give away a device. So how is 5G Wi-Fi implemented in the future for commercial use as well as personal?
5G Wi-Fi. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call it 5G Wi-Fi, but I'm going to mention that because we already have in the market Wi-Fi 6, right? We have equipment today on the newest 802.11ax Wi-Fi 6 standard in the market. Ruckus was the first one to ship product into the market about 18 months ago. But the good news is the one that we just shipped 18 months ago, it's same old Wi-Fi where you have 2.4 gigahertz band and you have the 5 gigahertz band. So it's not that we have a 5G equivalent of Wi-Fi, but it's a new Wi-Fi coming to the market very, very soon. That it's Wi-Fi 6E. It has an E at the end, and it's incorporating another piece of a spectrum on the 6 gigahertz band. So now we're going to have Wi-Fi in 2.4, Wi-Fi in 5 gigahertz, and we're going to have Wi-Fi in 6 gigahertz. And the beauty of it is when we had Wi-Fi initially only in 2.4, you had about 85 megahertz of spectrum. When the 5 gigahertz band came about, it was about 500. Now this new band and the 6 gigahertz band is going to be 1.2 giga. In other words, 1200 megahertz of empty bandwidth that's going to be available to make Wi-Fi even greater in terms of the capacity, in terms of the services, reduce the latency, make it much more quicker when it comes to accessing servers, services, and online interactions and communication.
Okay.
I guess that would be the equivalent of the 5G on Wi-Fi side. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, because some people still mix up 5G as in 5G cellular and
Yes.
5G Wi-Fi as in Wi-Fi. It's different technologies, all wireless but different technologies. And
Yes.
you know what, Saul, when we continue our series shift where we educate the people in the home about these different things, we should probably touch on that to clear up that misconception. All right.
Okay.
So guys, it's 3:11. So we're actually on the hour, just a little over. I'm seeing people dropping off. So we want to respect their times. I want now, Saul, I had a question, not to
Yeah.
complicate things, but I just wanted people to get this. So I have seen during this pandemic and moving forward, I have seen the the largest shift occur at the residence. And I want to clarify that. We understand that businesses had to get employees out. We understand schools had to get kids out, etc. But what I want us to see is that these people had to go somewhere and they all had to go to their homes. So, besides the physical shift of people into the homes, I want us to understand that there's always been a shift. There's also been a shift in the traffic requirements within your home. Those traffic requirements fall on devices that cannot handle that traffic. So we have consumers still expecting to be able to work from home, virtual
Yeah.
school, etc., on these traditional devices. So my question to you guys, I know how we are doing it right now. My question to you guys, how do you prepare a consumer to understand that what you're using right now, what you've been using for years, may not be capable of sustaining what's going forward? How do you prepare the customer to conceptualize that?
Yeah, it's been kind of a difficult question in terms of coming up with a plan how to do that, because the reality is that the average consumer, when it thinks about Wi-Fi for the home, they don't treat Wi-Fi the same way Wi-Fi is treated in the enterprise. What I mean by that, the enterprise is going to refresh that Wi-Fi every 3 or 4 years. Is going to have new technology come in. The latest and greatest trends in terms of protection and security are always rolled out very, very quickly. When we buy the Wi-Fi from the ISP, unfortunately, right, we are trusting the company, we're paying them for a service, and we are kind of install and forget about that piece of equipment. As long as it's working, we don't have any complaints, right? Now that we have this situation, the inefficiencies of that piece of equipment start to show up. And the way to go about it is people have to educate themselves a little bit better in terms of maybe a intelligent question to ask to the ISP is, what technology on Wi-Fi it's the one you are implementing in my home? In other words, if they come back and say, oh yeah, when we implemented, it was an 802.11n, guess what? 11n is older technology already from 8 years ago and doesn't have um, the capability in terms of bandwidth when it comes to the wireless connectivity to deliver to the actual modern devices that kids and professionals have today. Let's face it, kids have the latest Samsung or the latest iPhone on their hands, and maybe at home they don't have the latest modem or
Mhm,
router or AP for the Wi-Fi. So
mhm.
you have this Cadillac in your hand, and then the road is like a little dirt road, right?
Yeah.
You don't have a way of maximizing the performance of the device because the Wi-Fi is restricting you.
Mhm,
So that's the whole point. How much of a technology savvy person you are when it comes to the mobile device? The answer is there's a lot of information about that in the internet, and people get that information very quickly and easy.
yeah.
But not a lot of people read about how to educate themselves about the Wi-Fi
Okay.
infrastructure you have at home, and
I,
that's
I
what we're
mean,
trying to do
yeah.
here. We're
Correct.
trying to give that perspective in this particular event.
Okay, guys. So we're over time. Gideon from St. Lucia, you want that free device? You want to be able to pass it to your customers? Let's talk about that after. We like the interest that we're getting from you, so we will reach out to you to be able to see how we can help. Um,
Perfect.
we also have some more questions. I'll pull all those questions, guys, because we need to respect people's time. We can't stay around forever. I do want to give away that device. In this case,
Quick comment. Quick comment. Yes. I just want to answer the question from Akash, because
Akash,
I think
yes.
it's relevant to everybody. So, are there specific solutions that are available from
Mhm.
work from home from CommScope? Or are those enterprise solutions being introduced for use at home? So, long story short, we're running a promotion that Sheldon will be more than happy to share with you guys, where we grab one of our access point with, not the biggest capacities, but it's way, what you need for your home, and we put it down on a price that is competitive enough with the home solution. And you can talk to Sheldon about, price and what other solution he can add to that access point.
We are giving away that access point today as well. And
Right, that's one of the access point that we're giving away,
Yes,
but
yes.
we also given it, at CommScope, in order to help, promote this working from home, we set that access point at a lower price than usual, just to
Correct.
compete with home solutions, and that way you don't get too much affected by, by economic.
Correct. So what I'll do, guys, I'll put together all the questions. We'll work with the team and we'll send out all the answers. I want to give that access point primarily because I appreciate, the first question we had was from Claudia, and not it just being the first question, but the first question was based on her struggles at home with that existing Wi-Fi platform that she has. And the access point that we have here is actually designed to address that issue. So, I may get in a lot of trouble for this, accountability, etc., etc. But Claudia, we really feel your experience, and it's one of the things that we are seeing a lot in the industry right now, especially at the residence, because of what has taken place. So Claudia, I will reach out to you after, and we will arrange the delivery of that brand spanking new R310 access point to you. We will arrange installation or whatever we need to do to get it configured and placed in your environment. But congratulations, that device is yours. All right, so I'll reach out to you right after. So congratulations, Claudia, for always being so interactive. You have been on a lot of our events and you've always been very interactive, and you were actually the first person to ask a question today, and that question was very applicable. All right, so guys, just to...
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Claudia. I hope it brings some
All
happiness
right.
to the existing situation, Wi-Fi wise.
Yes. Yes, I look forward to it. So thank you very much.
No problem. So, guys, thank you for participating. Again, the guys that are on this this event, we want to extend our free 1-hour consultation to you guys for over the next 30 days. To book your consultation, we ask that you send the request to sales@bluenetworks.com, and our team will get in touch with you, to actually schedule to make sure that we deliver it as efficiently as possible. For more information on what was delivered here, guys, we have a blog article actually detailing some of the scenarios and so on that we spoke about here. So you can go to our website and our blog page, actually, which is a link off of our website, and pivot. The article is actually there. So, so you have that information as well. We also be sending the recording to you so you don't miss anything. So, guys, CommScope Ruckus, thank you again for your wonderful support. I know you guys are busy, all right? It's a big world out there, but I really appreciate the time, Saul and Antonio, to actually help us deliver what we have been trying to deliver all these years, which is a difference and, deliver value to our customers by ensuring that they're educated about not just what's in front of them, but what's happening globally. I really appreciate the support from the entire Blue Networks team.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having us as well. We're pleased to participate. Thanks.
Definitely.